Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Overnight Action Report here at MarketStream.live. My name is Joseph Cusick from the Cusick Group. Securities offered by MoneyBlock. Here to take a look at what's happened in Asia overnight and what's on tap right now going on in Europe, as well as take a look at the pre-market action here in the United States. Now, the pre-market action here in the United States is a little bit negative. We see the S&Ps and NASDAQ in the red, as well as the Dow Jones, Russell 2000, just slightly in the red. The Asian market still closed a little bit firmer, and that's where we want to take a look right now. Taking a look at the Japanese Nikkei, added about 0.7%. Basically, you had about 8 of the major sectors ending in the green. Most notable, utilities up 2.8%. You had financials up 1.5%, and materials in Japan up 1.2%. Those all outperformed the underperforming areas, which were consumer staples, down about 0.5%, and healthcare, that lagged about 1.1%. Names like SoftBank, Kobe Steel, Alps Electric, and TDK all gained between 3% and 6.3%. Now, EWJ, the iShares that track the Japanese stocks, they went out last night at 49.78. Right now, the weekly options that have basically 2.5 days left till expiration are pricing in the potential for this underlying to go up or down around 52 cents. That's about a little less than 1% move for the remainder of this week in EWJ. A little bit muted on the volatility side, so what does that mean for you traders and investors? Not a high expectation of huge violent moves in EWJ, which tracks Japan. Now taking a look at Hong Kong, and the Hang Seng rose about 0.6%. Financials outperformed with HSBC, BOC Hong Kong, Bank of East Asia, as well as China Life Insurance up between 0.7% and 3.3% respectively. EWH went out last night at 2083. That's the ETF that tracks the stocks in the Hang Seng. The monthly options are pricing in the potential for EWH to move either up or down over the next 10 trading days of about 1.9% or 42 cents. And vol is still relatively muted in Hong Kong. Now, the Chinese Shanghai Composite climbed throughout the session and ended on a higher note, up about 0.7%. Now, Goldman Sachs did come out overnight with their forecast for China for 2017 GDP growth. They're coming in at right around 6.5% on their forecast. Now, Chinese state researcher Wang Yinging said that he expects this year's growth to be stable in China. We'll keep an eye on that. That's going to be a big driver going forward into 2017, especially when President-elect Trump's policies do start to come to fruition. China's shipbuilding industry, though, which was most notable, that group climbed between, you saw names climbing between 6.1% and 10%. FXI, which tracks the large cap stocks in China, closed last night at 37.26. The weekly options are pricing in the potential for FXI to still move up or down about 2% for the remainder of this week. That's around 55 cents. And again, implied volatility relatively muted. Finally, taking a look at India. This will close up the areas that we look at in the Asian markets. The Sensex fell about 0.6% amid losses in most of the components. Now, the Reserve Bank of India kept its interest rates at 6.25% despite an anticipation or expectation of a cut in rates. Now, Sun Pharma also plunged about 6% after the Food and Drug Administration inspected one of its companies, one of the plants, and produced about a 14-page report in the process. Financials like Axis Bank, SBI, ICICI, and HDFC Bank all posted losses between 1% and 2% after the reserve they did not move rates in the Reserve Bank in India. Now, taking a look at EPI, which is the ETF that tracks Indian stocks, went out at 2011 last night. The weekly options are still pricing in the potential for this underlying to move either up or down about 2.2% for the remainder of this week. That's around 35 cents either up or down. Volatility is around 20%. It's still in that upper half of its implied volatility rank over the last 52 weeks. Now let's take a look at Europe. Europe's online right now. The markets have been open this morning. Germany's DAX currently is up about 1.5%. We have Commerzbank and Deutsche Bank rising about 4% and 3.2% respectively. We also continue to see that automakers like Volkswagen, BMW, Daimler are all up between 2.5% and about 3.1%. RWE and Adidas are among the laggards. They're basically giving up close to about 0.4% apiece. So we still see that exporters in Germany are moving to the upside. That is a good positive sign for growth as far as seeing exporters still moving product. EWG is the ETF that we're going to keep an eye on to watch German stocks here in the United States. It went out last night at 25.78. The weekly options are pricing in the potential for this underlying to move for the remainder of this week about 2.3%, either up or down. That's around 37 cents. And vol is relatively inexpensive. In other words, folks, when you see that vol is cheap, that just means that there's not a heightened expectation of a big movement in the underlying, which happens to be EWG. Now taking a look at the UK, the FTSE trades up about 1.6%. What's leading the way right now? Miners and financials. That's where the relative strength is right now. Rio Tinto, BHP Billiton are all up between 2.3% and 5.5%. We also have financials like RBS, Standard Chartered, HSBC, Old Mutual, Barclays, and Prudential all showing gains between 2.8% and 3.7%. EWU, the ETF that tracks the stocks in the UK, here in the United States through an ETF, trading at $30.74 on the close last night. The options are pricing in for the underlying to move for the remainder of this week around 2% or around 47 cents, and vol is cheap. The French CAC, higher by about 0.9%, with support from most of its components right now. We all are seeing exporters like Peugeot and Renault holding their respective gains of 2.9% and 1.8% early in the session, while financials like Societe Generale, BNP Paribas, and Crédit Agricole are all up between 1.2% and 2.1%. EWQ, the ETF that tracks French stocks, that went out last night at 24.19. The monthly options, which are expiring in 10 days, 10 trading days, are still pricing in the potential for this underlying to move about 72 cents either up or down, or around 4.5%. Vol is still relatively inexpensive. Finally, Italy. Now that we had the referendum off the books from this weekend, Italy is rise basically to levels that we haven't seen in months. It has added 1.1% today. And as a matter of fact, we haven't seen that level hit in over 6 months. BMPS jumped about 8% amid reports that the bank will be rescued using state funds. This is an important precedent right now because the banks were looking, that was the whole point of the referendum. They really needed to get capital within and infused within the banking system, which was underwater. Other financial names like UniCredit, Banco Popular, and UBI Banca are all up between 2.5% and 7.4% on this news. So Italian banks look like they could see an infusion of capital, and it's sorely needed right now, especially with the instability, with the political instability right now in Italy. EWI is the ETF that we utilize to track Italian stocks here in the United States. It's trading at 23.25, right around, let's say the options are pricing around 61-cent move, either up or down, or 3.2% for the remainder of this week. And vol is escalated here, so you could expect some larger violent moves either to the upside, like what we're seeing today, or to the downside. That's what volatility is telling you at this juncture. All right, folks, that is it right now for the Overnight Action Report. Join me at 9:30 Eastern Time, where I will be doing what's hot on the opening. So we'll see you then. Take care.